Hello, Amber here from LoveFit and She. And in week 30, believe it or not, of my Healthy Happy Pregnancy video series, I am going to talk a bit more about the good old pelvic floor. Last week I did a nice little tutorial on the pregnant core and tried to explain a little bit about the relationship between all the different components of the core. So I hope you found that helpful, and I promised that I was going to go into detail a bit more today about the pelvic floor and about the relaxation of the pelvic floor, because so much emphasis is placed on strength. You know, you need to strengthen your pelvic floor. You've got to do your pelvic floor exercises. And yes, you do. Please don't see this as me telling you not to do them. It's very, very important. But like any muscle, balance is the key. And coordination of that muscle is key. So it's not just about being able to pull it really tight or to lift your pelvic floor really high. You've got to ultimately be able to relax the pelvic floor, not least because, like any muscle in the body, you need a balance between the looseness, the flexibility, and the strength. But also because when it comes to giving birth, obviously that pelvic floor has got to release and relax to let the baby out. So as important as it is to have the strength to support the weight of the baby, to help turn the baby during the pregnancy, and to ensure you don't have terrible incontinence after the birth, you do need that pelvic floor to relax to allow that baby to come out. So yeah, I want to kind of talk a bit more about that and just explain more around why we need to do it and how best to do it. And I think often we think of the pelvic floor as just a muscle that has a kind of sphincter function. So, you know, we often, when we're trying to find the pelvic floor, talk about imagine you're trying to stop the flow of urine, or imagine you are trying to hold in gas. But actually, as well as that, you know, during pregnancy, the pelvic floor, obviously, as I've said, holds the weight of your growing baby. But it, on a day-to-day basis, pregnant or not, it supports all your internal organs. It's there as a part of your breathing. I said it's got a direct relationship between your diaphragm and your pelvic floor. So it's all part of your breathing. It's also there for a postural function. So your pelvic floor is part of your lumbo-pelvic stability. And, you know, let's face it, there's a sexual function there as well. So lots of reasons to look after your pelvic floor and to make sure it remains in balance. And I can't stress that word enough. One phrase I heard that I thought was a really good way of describing how you need to have your pelvic floor is to have a spectrum of movement. It's not just about tension, it's about release and about letting it go. So, you know, we've all heard a lot of Frozen songs, and actually when I was listening to an interview about pelvic floor, they referred to let it go, but it couldn't be more true when it comes to your pelvic floor. So I guess, yeah, what I want to focus on here is way back I did a video about how to properly do your kind of modern day Kegels, your pelvic floor exercises. So adding the breath, adding visualization, squeezing something between your thighs to help a further contraction. What I maybe didn't talk about enough there, and what I want to emphasize here, is the let go part. So for example, before you do any pelvic floor exercises, taking a few really deep breaths in, and then when you exhale, just relaxing. Allow your stomach to relax, allow your pelvic floor to relax. Do that a few times before you start trying to do the actual pelvic floor lifts and contractions. And yeah, I think it's also when you have done the contraction, really emphasize the let go as well. Don't just stop. Actually think of releasing and completely relaxing, because that's going to help your pelvic floor maintain the correct natural resting tone that it needs, rather than just being really strong. As I say, most people suffer from not having enough strength in their pelvic floor, but it does work both ways. You need to learn how to control that muscle like you would with anything else. So I think what I'm also trying to say here is that if you think of any other muscle in your body, you don't just contract it. If you were doing bicep curls in the gym, you don't hold the weight here and then walk around for the rest of the day and the rest of your life with your arms flexed. You always bring it up and then you release. Same if you were doing squats. You know, you might occasionally, and I know I do this sometimes with clients and in boot camps, you might hold a squat position and have what we call an isometric contraction, but you don't then stay there forevermore and walk around in a permanent squat. You stand up and you release. And of course, Hopefully you are also doing some foam rolling. You might be seeing a sports massage therapist. At the end of the day, hopefully you sit with your feet up and relax a little bit, or you have a nice long soak in the bath. You do something to counteract the tough side of your workout. So if you do a lot of strength training, hopefully you're doing the remedial work as well in the form of yoga, foam rolling, magnesium spray, anything to help the muscles relax. It's the balance of the two. But one thing I think women are particularly guilty of is trying to keep certain muscles in their core permanently switched on. And this is very true of our tummy muscles, of the transverse abdominis, which again, I pointed out a little bit in last week's diagram. But a lot of women actually train themselves to hold their belly button in. And we've been told so many times in historic kind of fitness classes, belly button to spine, pull your belly button in, contract the abs, and all of this stuff. And actually, some people are so afraid to relax because they think their stomach gets a little bit of a pooch and it hangs out, that they permanently squeeze the abs in. And actually, there's no other muscle in your body you would do that to. And it can cause massive dysfunction if you do it. So I think the first thing is to learn how to relax. I've had this with clients before, especially when I'm teaching hyperpressives. If you don't know about them, you can Google it and have a look on my website. But basically, one of the key parts of that is that before you get this involuntary subconscious contraction of the core, you need to fully relax the abdominal wall before you can do that. And I've had clients who really struggle because they cannot relax their abs. They're so used to having them pulled in that they just won't relax. And as I say, that creates a dysfunction because, as I explained last week, so refer back if you can't remember, but all of these muscles in the core are linked. So if your tummy muscles, if this transverse abdominis is permanently switched on, that means your diaphragm can't completely relax. And of course, in pregnancy, it's already being displaced anyway because of all the extra, or not extra organs, but all the organs lifting up. So it's harder for your diaphragm to fully relax. But if you are permanently switched on here, your diaphragm can't relax, which then affects your breathing. And of course, your breathing has huge implications for stress levels, also for digestive function. And we know that your diaphragm, your TVA, and the pelvic floor all have a direct relation. So if all of that is permanently on, and your diaphragm can't relax, your pelvic floor cannot relax either. And that is going to cause issues if you don't know how to properly relax it. So first of all, just trying to get used to letting it relax. Do it in private first if you don't feel confident walking around, but allow things to hang out, because if you get the right balance, you will get the right resting tone and your stomach won't stick out. You shouldn't have to pull it in actively and consciously to create the body that you want, So I think that's really, really important for you to understand. What else did I want to say about this? Yeah, I think, therefore, lots of practice on the relaxation phase, lots of when you are relaxing, just allowing the body to be. And when you do your pelvic floor exercises, to really emphasize the release phase as well. And one other thing to say is that to protect your pelvic floor, because we know that lots of these internal pressures and increase in internal pressure can really do quite a lot of damage to your pelvic floor, things that you can do to help your pelvic floor and actually to help it relax are, firstly, when you are going to the toilet, particularly for a bowel movement, it is worth having your feet slightly up. So on something only maybe sort of 10 centimetres high, maybe just on top of a couple of loo rolls actually is sort of the perfect height. But modern day toilets do not provide the right angle. And especially if you're constipated, which is a common symptom of pregnancy. But if you have any kind of toiletry issues and find it difficult to pass a stool, then what often happens is people hold their breath and they strain, and you're in a really bad position, kind of slumped forwards with your feet on the floor, and it does not create the right angle for your bowel to open. So for your pelvic floor to relax, remember the pelvic floor is not just the front, you've got the back as well. Your whole undercarriage is supported by the pelvic floor. So by bringing your feet up, it creates a more natural position. If you actually think originally how man went to the toilet and how in many developing countries they still do, you squat over a hole in the ground. That's a much more natural position. So raise your feet up and breathe. Do not hold your breath. So anybody having any difficulty going to the toilet, try that. I promise you it'll make a massive difference, and it will help your pelvic floor relax instead of staying in a tight position. As I've said before, don't do lots of crunches if you have pelvic floor issues. So this goes for whether you're pregnant, postnatal, or any other reasons that you might not have a great functioning pelvic floor. And then another thing is to do breath work, just to really work on your breathing, because that helps your posture, it helps your stress levels, it helps maintain a good balance of the whole body. Breathing is so important. And finally, I want to remember to stress the importance of a sub-maximal contraction of your abs and of your pelvic floor. So I want you to kind of work on what I call a brace, and I think a lot of physios refer to as the knack, which is not a squeezing in or a holding in of your belly button, but just a sub-maximal contraction, feeling a little bit of movement and tension in your pelvic floor and in your abs, and doing that before you do anything that's going to create pressure. So before you sneeze or cough, obviously if you have warning, or before you go to, say, lift something heavy such as a suitcase or shopping bags or a child. So anything that is going to involve an increase in your intra-abdominal pressure. So even something as simple as going from sitting to standing or getting out of bed, all of those things come under that. So if you can do that sub-maximal brace and then relax afterwards, that's all going to help. Okay, so I really hope that makes sense. I really hope that helps you to understand the importance of this balance and this complete function of the pelvic floor. And yeah, let it go, guys, so to speak. And I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.